Are you on? Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the January 15th regular board meeting of the Talbot County Board of Education. As you can see, we are all here. We're at TCEC, and I move that the January 15th, 2024 regular board meeting of the Talbot County Public Schools will move to closed session as permitted by the Maryland Open Meetings Act, Section 3-305B, Provisions 1, 7, and 8 of the General Provisions Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, and Section 3-103 of the General Provisions Articles of the Annotated Code of Maryland for the following reasons. Citation 3-305B, Provision 1, regarding personnel reporting, to discuss the appointment, employment, assignment, promotion, discipline, demotion, compensation, removal, resignation, or performance evaluation of appointees, employees, or officials over whom it has jurisdiction, or any other personnel matter that affects one or more specific individuals. Citation 3-305B, Provisions 7 and 8, regarding legal matters. 7, to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on the following legal matters. And 8, to consult with staff, consultants, or other individuals about pending or potential litigation, which includes the following: a social media lawsuit regarding litigation on the behalf of school districts against Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, and YouTube. A lawsuit regarding an alleged injury to a student. An OCR case regarding special education services. A student case regarding the alleged failure of TCPS to provide a free, appropriate public education. A student case involving school/residential placement. An employment appeal case for which the board will meet in a quasi-judicial role to hear oral argument. Citation 3-305B, Provisions 9, regarding negotiations, to conduct collective bargaining negotiations or consider matters related to negotiations. Do I have a second?
Meeting for the purpose of hearing an appeal.
Amending my motion to go into a quasi-judicial, we will be going into a quasi-judicial role to hear an appeal. Do I have a second to that?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. We will be back for open later. My microphone, am I on? Hello? My light's not working. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Talbot County Board of Education. We are back. It is 6:17. Ready? Okay. Thank you for your patience. If everybody could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, that would be great. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Do I have, now I'm off. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Wait, did I approve the agenda? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from our regular board meeting December 18th, 2024?
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Recognition of the public. If nobody signed up for public comment, is there anybody in the room who would like to make a comment this evening? Next up is school board appreciation.
So you can see, oh, they're still testing it. So you can see that January is School Board Appreciation Month, and so all the school boards have sent over nice treats and gifts for each of the board members. A lot of meetings, a lot of time and effort. We really appreciate you being on.
Good evening, everyone. Oh, wait. It's not going to be. Okay. So this is for the end of December and then start of January, and also like what's been upcoming since we've kind of been off. It's a little light, but so we're going to talk about sports, the real world, the school musical, career day, and snow days. So winter sports, we've obviously been off, but boys basketball and girls basketball had a big week this week. They both played QA and North Dorchester. Currently the girls' record is not doing so well, but they work really hard. And last night the boys unfortunately lost in a very close game against Queen Anne's. It went into overtime. I heard it was a very good game. And wrestling just had a match today, so they still have the same current record. Then last time I was here, I discussed that we would be having a St. Michael's Real World.
So basically, people from the community came in, and we basically just took the whole day and were taught real-world skills. Those skills include changing a tire, folding laundry, community outreach, yoga. It was honestly like a super fun day. We did a whole, at the end of the day, like a survey, and the results were really good and positive. And I personally really enjoyed it a lot. I didn't know how to change a tire. I do kind of know how to change a tire now. So it was really interesting. Next, our school musical has changed. We were originally doing The Little Mermaid. We are now doing Snow White and the Prince. This will take place the last week in February and the first weekend in March. Next, we have been advocating for students to attend the TCPS Career Fair. It's been posted all around the school, and so looking forward to that. Then, just to end, I had some of my friends collect some photos from their snow days that I just thought everyone could see, because obviously the snow was here for a while, and that's a wrap for this one.
Okay, thank you very much. Gabrielle, you're up next.
Okay. Hi, thank you with Brins. It's definitely this month is a little bit shorter than normal just because we haven't had much going on. So, yeah.
Let you know. First thing is we do have Unified Bowling starting up soon. So this is actually through Easton Elementary School and their Unified Bowling team. However, we have students from our school help with these bowling matches, each Saturday morning from January 11th all the way until the end of February. And then our school spirit has been very strong, especially before break. The staff and students have a week-long spirit week, and so our staff definitely won this year. They were a lot more spirited than us students, and that's a picture of our great staff. And then sports. Again, not a lot has been happening, but our hockey team did take home a great win against Queen Anne's on December 20th, so just at the beginning of our break. And then our students have been involved in the community. On Christmas Day, actually, some of our students dedicated their time to help others at the Easton Fire Hall. And this is a picture of them. They spent a few hours there, and we are so thankful for them to represent our school. And then our musical department, they have been working hard. The Warriors band had their winter performance. Our choir had their winter performance. At the band concert, there was the color guard, and then we also had our advanced theater class perform a one-act play during our choir concert. And then we do have a new offering at our school. Our school is offering the driver's permit test for any student who's 15 and 9 months or older. So you can sign up to take this, and you can take it, I believe, in the library or the auditorium. So this is great for students and families who don't always have time to get to their test. And we do have a new lunch and learn opportunity. Benson and Mangold Real Estate will be at our school on January 21st, where students can learn more about the real estate world and if they might possibly be interested in entering that career field. And then upcoming events, the Easton High School National Honor Society is partnering with For All Seasons to collect basic hygiene supplies in support of their clients' needs. And this is something we've been working very closely with them. And I actually have been meeting with their CEO, and we will be working on a joint event with Kent Island High School, our high school, and For All Seasons sometime in March. More details to come. And we are super excited. This is going to be a talent show situation. So both schools will bring talent, and it'll build good school camaraderie as well as support for all seasons. The start of semester 2 means new classes coming soon. The rehearsals for the EHS Spring Play Sisters Act will be starting very soon as well. And the National Honor Society induction was postponed since we were not in school during the time, so it will be postponed to another time soon. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies. Lots going on, even though you seem to think that there is not. Exciting stuff. Next up, we have board committee reports. Does anybody have a report this month? Okay, it seems like May committees are getting into full swing, so I would assume you've got some reports coming up soon. Next on the list, we have new business, and we have the proposed FY26 budget, which is in first reader with Mrs. Johnson.
Good evening. We're going to do a quicker synopsis, summary, oops, I'm going the wrong way, of what we talked about at the work session on Monday evening. We are at the January 15th Board of Education meeting looking at our budget request as a first reader. And coming up, our next times we'll be talking about this is on January 22nd. We're going to be having a joint board meeting with the county council, so I'm sure this topic is on the agenda. And then on February 10th, which is the date of our next work session on the budget, prior to the work session, we will be having a public budget hearing. So we encourage members of the public to come and give us their feedback at that point. As you know, we encourage and look at a lot of different data points when we are forming the budget. We want to, include the needs of our students, the aspirations and regulations, guidelines of the blueprint, and we want to make sure we're meeting our students where they are by looking at their current student performance data and trends. Am I doing this right? I'm doing this wrong. So who are our students? These are the demographics of our students, both in their background and in some of the needs that they have. 59% of our students qualify for free and reduced meals. 15% of our students are multilingual, meaning English is not their first language. 12% of our students have some sort of special education services being provided, and 64% are at risk, which means they are one of those categories or more. As you know, we've talked about our goals a lot, promoting academic equity and achievement, particularly in math, providing an engaging environment for students and staff, promoting, recruiting, and retaining the best staff, and meeting blueprint objectives. These are the blueprint objectives, and we're going to talk about those in a minute. I wanted to just highlight those again because when we go through the position request that we're going to spend some time on tonight, I tried to highlight how each of the positions that we're requesting fit into our strategic plan or fit into the blueprint objectives that we're trying to meet. So, unfortunately, this slide didn't come out very well. So, I'm not sure why it looked pretty when we turned it in, but PowerPoint. So, as you know, we have a pretty big increase in our request currently. I think it's $8.7 million. So I wanted to highlight just the major reasons for the increases in the budget. First of all, we have a placeholder in the budget for an increase for all of our staff of just over $2.1 million. And it's a consistent increase against all, both support staff, administration, teaching, and certified staff. Then we have put in a number of new positions, and those positions come with a price tag close to the same amount of money, $2.1 million. And those, we'll go into those in a minute. The health insurance increase is based on somewhere between a 5 and 7% increase in premiums, as well as the cost of health insurance for the new positions, and that's a $1.3 million increase. We have put an OPEB contribution into our budget, and we don't currently have an OPEB contribution in the FY25 budget because we had prepaid it at the end of FY24, so that appears to be an increase in the full amount of the $500,000 line item. Other fixed charges costs, so tied to salaries are pension. We contribute a certain percentage of salaries into the state retirement systems that our employees belong to. There's FICA and just some other costs such as workers' comp insurance, and it all ties back to our salaries. So there's, across those other fixed charges or benefits cost, there's an increase of $376,000. Then I mentioned to you the other day that we are adding summer school back into our local budget. The teacher portion of that is about $270,000, and I think it's about $83,000 for the buses, for the bus drivers for the summer. This doesn't show up very well, but community schools, as you know, we're adding 3 additional community schools next year. So one of the things that we're doing, the cost of the positions that are going to the community schools are included up above in the $2,075,000 salary for additional positions, but there are other costs associated with community schools. I do want to point out that we are getting funding from the state for almost all of that. All of the positions, the county will contribute for some of these costs in under community schools here at the bottom of the slide. So we're providing student health services at a cost of $158,000, and other contracted services. I feel like let's see if that number is here, in the amount of $227,000. And almost all of that is a new program called Conscious Discipline that we're piloting at Easton Elementary School, as well as I think there are a number of educators that are going to participate in that training. We have training scheduled for late June, I believe, and we're going to put, I think, over 100 educators through that training, and it's designed to help teachers be trained in helping students manage emotions, emotional reactivity, and helping them be in the right frame of mind to be learning and focus on learning and not other things that may be impacting them. Then under some other major increases, sort of in the technology, equipment, and curriculum instructional areas, we have materials of instruction. We have an increase there of $289,000. Couple things, big ticket items in there. One is a multi-year renewal of our ELA program for all secondary 6 through 10. So it's really a 4-year renewal. That's about $160,000. That's driving part of that increase. Also, one of the new programs we have is a program to individualize math interventions. Some of you may know that at Easton Middle School, they've restructured the day to allow more time for interventions, and this is going to be helpful there and at other schools with some of the work that we want to do there. We also have some money in our materials of instruction for a new CTE curriculum as well. Student devices and other hardware. Last year we spent $400. We were able to fund some of our tech student devices, staff devices, other hardware, wiring in our buildings, networking, all the things. We were able to use federal ESSER funds to pay for $482,000 of our needs last year. Those funds have gone away, so that's the majority of the reason. I'm not saying it's, the hardware changes a little bit from year to year. One year we might need to buy switches for this building, and then the next year we're buying a router for this building or a server or whatever. So that, that it's not exactly dollar for dollar, but to give you an idea, we've been using a lot of ESSER funds over the last several years. And so now that we don't have those, that's resulting in a big increase in our local budget to keep the sort of the same level of security and other hardware that we need. Software, we have an increase of $488,000 there, and that is, again, the same reasons that we've been using federal funds in prior years to cover a lot of those costs. We are looking at a new system for school security that involves a purchase of equipment as well as a contract with a monitoring company, maybe it's more software. And the cost of that is $213,000. And bus leases, there's an increase of $241,000. Of that, $157,000 would be the cost of actual new buses, and the remaining $90,000 is we took our FY25 budget down somewhat because we, again, prepaid some of our payments that would have been due in FY25. We prepaid them at the end of FY24. So those are the major increases. Those add up to just a little bit over what our total overall increases in the budget. And the reason for that is, what I didn't put on here is that I had factored in some savings from salary vacancies of about $700,000. And then of course there's minor fluctuations both ways. I didn't highlight, everything on this slide. I just wanted to give you an overall explanation of the big ticket items. And that's really reflected on this slide. Salaries and wages. This is sort of this is across all departments, salaries and wages. So this is for support staff as well as certified staff. That's that salary placeholder as well as new positions, summer school wages, Contracted services, a big piece of that is the nursing services and the community service, the community school services. Software is considered a contracted service, and so the increase in software is reflected in contracted services. Supplies and materials, that's primarily the increase we just talked about related to materials of instruction. Land, buildings, other charges, that is our fixed charges, and so we talked about the OPEB, the health insurance, and FICA and pension cost increases related to increases in our salaries. Land, buildings, and equipment, that 935,000 is the increase in bus leases, the increase in hardware. Those are the main things, and the security equipment. So I did just want to spend a little bit of time, since it was a lengthy list of new positions and the board had not had a chance to sort of dive into those. You may have had a chance to look at those in the meantime since our last discussion about this. So I just laid them out a little bit differently and summarized them by, as I said, how they sort of fit into our strategic plan. So one of our priorities as a board and of Dr. Papakai is the advancing academic equity and achievement in math. And to that end, we've added a lot of resources in ESOL and special education. ESOL is, definitely through our MCAP scores, we see it's a population of ours that's underserved currently, and we need to make some improvements there. Special education, we have some additional needs there as well. A lot of these are at the middle school level and the secondary level because we have some, that's where our needs are. Additional student supports are going to continue on to the next slide. We are starting there with some additional math and reading interventionist, and those are at the middle and high schools. The additional instructional assistant is at the high school level. The 2 social workers are currently, one of them is a brand new position. We currently have one position that's split between Chapel and Tillman, and so this would be allowing each school to have a social worker to themselves. And the other social worker position is an existing staff member who is coming off of a grant that needs to go into our local budget to remain at that school. Continuing along with additional student supports, we have a student services worker that would be working to encourage attendance and work with our homeless population and all the things that student services workers do. We would like to add a supervisor of school counseling to provide that mentoring and supervision and support to our school counselors so that they can provide best-in-class service to our students and guidance to them. The 2 bus assistants would help. We've added a number of special ed students to our bus routes, and we have to have a bus assistant on all of those buses, so this would help with, this could have been under this or under the previous slide under ESOL. We want to add an art teacher to expand our offerings to our Easton Middle School students who are currently limited to 3 of the 5 possible tracks under fine arts. We want to add an athletic trainer. We feel it's important to bring an athletic trainer on staff versus just contracting with an outside organization for a number of reasons, for the safety of our students and our visiting teams. And we want to add a federal title grant supervisor. The federal grants, we receive about $10 million in federal grants every year. The responsibility for tracking, supervising, planning those grants falls in bits and pieces among many people's job responsibilities, and we'd like to consolidate much of that to allow them time to focus on their other responsibilities, but also to concentrate that expertise, keep up the professional knowledge needed to maintain those grants in one person. And finally, under providing an engaging staff for both students and providing an engagement environment for both students and staff, we have this expansion of our community schools. So each of the 3 new schools would need a new community school coordinator. We would add a social worker and a family navigator at 2 of these community schools, one of whom is an existing staff, one of whom is a current staff member. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. One of those two positions is a new position, and one of those is an existing staff person that was previously grant funded. And then finally, under the board priority of recruiting, retaining, and promoting staff, to do that behind the scenes, we need to have adequate support in the payroll and the HR side to maintain certifications, to process payroll, and all of the administrative support that's needed there. So those are our new positions. I'll continue on just to the end, and then we can come back and talk through any new positions that you want to hear a little more about. This is the same information sliced and diced a little different way. This is broken down into the 12 categories, departments of the school system. And I think you can kind of guess that we've talked about a lot of these increases just in a different way. I have to pull this up. Under administration, we have some of those 2 administrative positions we were just talking about, payroll and a certification specialist, that's driving that increase. Under, sorry, I'm back a page. Under mid-level administration, we have that federal grants position. Under instructional salaries, we have the majority of those new positions we just talked about. Under materials of instruction, we talked about some of the additional software and supplies and programming, and that's really split between both materials of instruction and other instructional costs, because some of those are software programs that go into other instructional cost. All of our hardware and devices and the that I mentioned we were seeing big increases in are in other instructional cost. Special ed, the only change there really are those additional few positions, as well as an increase placeholder for staff salaries. Pupil personnel services, there was one additional position in there, and that was the supervisor of school counseling. Transportation, we have summer school, the summer school transportation, we have 3 new bus aides, and we have the additional bus payments. Operation of plant, very little change there. And maintenance of plant, we have increases related to that school security system. Fixed charges, we've talked about OPEB, retirement, pension, and health insurance. That is, we've been through this slide. I guess there's some repeats in here, sorry. So it's an $8.6 million, $8.7 million increase. When you look and just consider what we are paying for with what's called unrestricted money, so it's not coming in through a grant. That's not how we're paying for it. But when you look at our whole budget and the whole of the work that we do get grant funding, and we are experiencing what's called the fiscal cliff. All of our COVID-related funds dropped off at the end of the very beginning of this year, really. So for next year, we don't have access to any of those funds. But the reason I'm pointing this out is that if you look at our FY 25 budget, we were anticipating spending $92.3 million in combined between our federal funds and our local funds. And next year, this budget anticipates spending $95.7 million. So it's a $3.3 million increase, which is a 3.6% increase. So if you kind of look at the operations in total, it's not as significant of an increase as you might think otherwise. The other night, we may have had a couple questions on the capital budget. What we're talking about for next year, for FY '26, is the completion of the Chapel Elementary renovation and expansion, as well as the stadium light conversion at St. Michael's Middle High School.
Last budget cycle, our capital project request that Mr. Schaefer presented included HVAC funding for Easton High, and I'm not seeing that on the latest request, and obviously HVAC would be a pretty relevant topic.
Sure. It's on there, but it's not on there for next year. It's out a couple years. It's fourth or fifth from the bottom. I'll let Mr. Schaefer address that.
It just seemed like it was added into the capital request last year, and it seemed like at the time it was presented as a more pressing matter.
Good evening, everybody. So Ms. Dodson, yes, the HVAC system at Easton High School is a pressing issue. When we were, I think and just to make sure that we're talking about the same thing, when the council allowed for the additional 1.5 million, that was discussed as one of the options to fund, as one of the projects that would be funded through that money. But when you look at it, when you step back and look at it more at the county level, the Easton Middle School roof replacement would have been prioritized over that project, but it was too much money to be included at that time for the 1.5 that we had available. So now that we're looking at this, county-wide and not just with that cap of the 1.5 million, it is prioritized over the Easton High School HVAC equipment because it is more of a kind of a dire need. In addition, just, and I don't know how much detail you want here, but the state does have their process for assessing our buildings. And so the backup that we use to justify these, because I will be asking for state participation for both of those projects, is their scoring rubric. So the state does rank the Easton Middle School roof as a higher priority.
Well, while we're waiting on the state to determine what they're going to allocate to us for these projects, are we going to be able to keep the HVAC running at the high school?
Yeah, and so, I can't predict the future. And what this really means is if there are failures, we're probably going to have to spend more money out of our operational budget to keep those units running for the duration in between. So yes, we will make sure that building has operational HVAC units. There's 4 remaining rooftop units that date back to '97, and so they are old, but we're still able to purchase equipment. They're not the most efficient. Certainly an upgrade would be better for comfortability in the building and for energy usage and that type of thing, but we can keep them running our plan is to keep them running until we receive the funds from the state. So.
I don't have a mic, apparently. Okay. I just want to echo kind of what Ms. Dodson is saying, and I was really under the impression, based on the presentation that you made, when we were talking about the allocation of those funds, that this was a much more pressing issue. So it's a little surprising to see it pushed out so far. I understand what you were saying. I think my point would be coupled with a request that we talk about these things under those type of circumstances in this kind of way. This would have been helpful information to have when we were having that discussion 3 months ago.
Understood.
And I would say one other thing, in trying to divvy up the 1.5 million too, we had to look at projects that could meet the criteria that we could bid out, or there was a time limit and so that wouldn't have been something we could have done it. We couldn't have gotten a bid, blah, 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 so that was a consideration too.
And just so I'm on the same page with the board, we were comparing what, from a maintenance perspective, what we perceived as a greater priority for the use of those funds. So I just want to be clear on that. That was our perspective, that was a better use of those funds to prioritize HVAC replacement at Easton High School over the field at the time. So that was the recommendation that we were making. Okay.
I guess, oh, sorry. Are there any tax with energy efficiency credits when we do those sort of repairs, primarily roof and HVAC, and also credits that we might apply for?
I don't know specifically about HVAC. I know we look at, we have, when we have the opportunity to put in, say, a solar field or certain things at Chapel, we have the opportunity to get federal tax rebates to apply for them. They exist currently. Whether they will exist when all is said and done is a little unknown. Yeah.
Solar ever been considered?
We have a solar array at a field, and the way it works is we basically get, no, we actually have a field really close by here. It's kind of hidden, and we get energy credits basically back to us. It doesn't actually power a building. It's more that it supplies power to the grid, and then we get billing credit back. And then we have some debt service that the county pays for us. So, I don't know. I'm here for your questions.
I have several questions. I'm looking over the budget, and on page 2, the CFO is a .75 position.
Yep, 0.25 of my job is paid for by the food service fund because I'm in charge of food service. So, and that does take a decent portion of my time to administer that program.
Assistant superintendent is a .25 position.
So the assistant superintendent, Dr. Horsey, oversees many departments: HR, transportation, student serve. She has ultimate responsibility for several departments. So her, you'll see, 0.15, 0.25 in several supervisory line items of salary budgets, and that's portions of her salary.
A few more questions, sorry.
No worries.
On the school bus fuel, we're asking for less than we did in '24. Will that be enough?
Well, yeah. I hope. Fingers crossed. Prices are coming down. I don't know.
I mean, that's right. So we have seen decrease in prices, and although volatile, the market is volatile, we don't expect to see any major spikes. And so we did, just to be clear, so because fuel was so high previous year, that's pretty, we were planning for higher fuel prices, and now that we've seen them come down, we feel like we need to adjust. So.
Last question, on page 72, could you explain what concentration of poverty is and why there's such a huge jump?
That's our community schools. The grant that pays for our community schools is called the Concentration of Poverty Grant. So each community school will receive $282,000 in what's called the personnel grant, and that's to pay for the community school coordinator and any nursing services. We don't have any nursing services in our staffing, on staff. We do have some contracted services. So what we're using some of those other funds for are the social workers, some of the other positions that we've talked about that are more supporting mental health. We have family navigators at Easton Elementary School. Then there, Easton, the other reason for the increase, so it's right here. It's about right in the middle of the page. The other the reason that $1.2 million increase is that at Easton Elementary School, they'll be going into the 4th year of being a community school. Starting in the 3rd year, they begin to get, in addition to the personnel grant, what's called the per pupil grant. So first 2 years planning, you have staff, you figure out what you need, and then starting in year 3, you begin to implement your programming. And so it's sort of a growing effect. The first year you get 16% of your funding under the per pupil formula. The next year you get, I think, 32%. So it's smart. It's ramping up the program. It understands you can't hit the ground running day 1 of year 3 with every single thing in place. So it's ramping that up. Great questions.
And that was 3 new school buses in this budget cycle, correct?
Yes.
I just have a question about the positions. The federal title grant supervisor, you spoke a little bit about maintaining, and that position is currently a dual role.
For many of our curriculums supervisors, many people have that as part of their job description. I don't know that every single one of them would lose that piece, but several of them would, and especially Title I, which is our biggest title program and requires the most, and it requires us, our Title I funds, we're in charge of Title I funds not only for our school, but for other private schools and in the district. So it's coordinating with them, there's auditing, there's a lot, and it's working, we have a fair number of staff that are charged to that grant, so there's a lot involved with management of that. Does that make sense?
It does. We did talk about during one of our work sessions some time ago about having someone who could actually search and apply for grants. So I'm wondering if the person who is in this role or someone else similar will be able to accomplish that work.
I think it would depend. I think it depends on 2 things. One, it would depend on the skill set of the person applying, because it is definitely 2 different skill sets. I mean, it's like sort of administration and knowledge of the whole, federal code surrounding managing grants, and then there's the grant writing, and some people have those skill sets, some people don't.
Understood. I think with all of that being said, it could also be able to give us an opportunity to make up for some of the funding with the increase that we have in our current budget.
And that stuff, I know that's the group that I'm working on with our strategic planning process, and we've talked about the need for that, whether next year's the year to roll into that, or maybe it is, if we want to add that position, we can do that. If we want to try and contract it. I know in the past, my first year here, that was a position that had been approved for the budget. We just did not have the applicants at that time, and so that effort kind of died, although we did also try to contract with some grant writers, and just nothing. And then all of a sudden, the floodgates opened with the COVID funding, and we had more than we could manage, I will say, not more than we could handle, but a lot to manage. So I hear what you're saying. I don't know that the intent of this position was not to also do grant writing, because I think that's really more state and local than federal.
Can I piggyback on her
Yeah.
question? During the strategic planning process, they identified a need for a grant type of position. Do you know if it was more what is in the budget or what Ms. Strawberry is asking about?
Again, that's the group I'm working on. That was the question we were wrestling with yesterday. I think ultimately the idea is, yes, we need to figure out a way to raise some additional funds, and so that would be it. But again, it's a question of, is that an FY26 or FY27? One approach could be to get this person on board and see what their skill set is, or, we could go ahead and put another position in as a grant writer. Might be a part-time position, it might be a contracted position. Those are all ways to go.
We were just saying maybe you search for both and see who applies and hire
Yeah,
whichever
yeah.
one you find.
Yeah, okay.
I have a question. I know we're providing engaging engaging environments for students and staff. So I know that we definitely need all the special ed. You know, we have all these different special ed community groups. What about our advanced students or above average, especially like middle school for honors classes? I hope that we're going to concentrate on those folks also.
We don't have any specific additional positions strictly related to gifted and talented, if you will. I think we do have, obviously, funding for AP classes. We do have funding for dual enrollment classes. So that kind of addresses some of the needs of high school.
Right. I mean, I'm not even talking gifted and talented, but just honors, for advanced students. You know, even starting like for pathways in 8th grade, so they can, you know, English or even like full year biology, you know, full year chemistry, full year languages.
Okay.
In order to be competitive, or coding classes for our kids when they're getting ready to go to college.
I'll let Dr. Einhorn address that.
We have been able to add some of those courses through our Gateway to Technology, Project Lead the Way courses that allow coding, that allow pre-engineering work in the middle school. We're also very cognizant of what is in the blueprint and what we need to lay out as the blueprint starts to come into place. Within the blueprint, there are provisions for an early college model for our students. So we really want to make sure that we are attentive to what we have to roll out in the blueprint to ensure all of our students are being accelerated in compliance with the blueprint. So there are pieces in there that are coming further in the implementation for that. So right now we're really focusing on what are the pieces we have to have in place right now, and that is ensuring that all students are CCR, and our data is currently showing that we're still underserving in the needs of our special education students and our students who are multilingual learners. So we are building out those pieces as we work with our local community college and our staff to look at how we start to build out those programs for middle school that lead into high school for our accelerated students.
Right. Okay. I just don't want to see the other side being lost. I mean, I know we need both. I just don't see the other side being represented much.
I'd like to add on to what Ms. O'Connor is saying, and we have talked about this in the past, so some of this is a little redundant if anybody has watched us go back and forth about this. We haven't identified 10% of our population as being identified as gifted and talented, and you know that gifted and talented only serves a small number of grades, so that's not even representative of our entire population of students. It is almost equal to the same number of students who are identified as special education. And so I agree with you, it is a subgroup that we do need to pay more attention to, and we have talked about it in the past. I know we have increased our gifted and talented offerings, and we sort of changed our models a few different times, and so I know that the way that they're offering gifted and talented to middle school this year is different. I'm curious to see the data and hear about how that has gone for that cohort of students. But I also am very interested in talking about opportunities for our high achievers who may not be identified as gifted and talented, as it is a very narrow scope of identification. It's just for math. And you're identified in a very specific way. I want to make sure we are offering resources for every one of our students, each one of our students, no matter where they're falling on the spectrum. I'm not sure that that happens under this specific budget in this specific budget cycle. And so I think I would request that we continue this conversation in a variety of different ways along with what is happening in Blueprint that we are required to do. I also have questions. Does anybody else want to go? Okay. I'm looking at our budget timeline and knowing that we made some changes to first reader, second reader, we no longer have a third reader, and thinking, hey, we're looking at a shortened budget cycle. We have less time to discuss this as a board. How did that happen? Because this seems to be the same timeline that we always work on. We usually approve this by February. Have we started earlier in the past?
Yes,
Okay.
we've switched to the 2-reader model. So in alignment with the changes we made to that. So we literally just cut out the first. What I will say is we talked about it in January. Usually what we've done Monday and Wednesday nights this week, we did in December in the past. My experience has been in January, nothing has changed. I mean, we talked about it again, but it's the same information, nothing has changed. And the other thing that kind of was driving this was I still don't have our official revenue numbers. I anticipate getting them Friday or Monday, but I don't have anything new to offer you. And so that's been a problem the last 2 years. In the January meeting, it's been like, well, I don't know anything new to tell you about our revenue, and there just hasn't been much movement. So that was the thought.
I think my concern about it is that whatever we request or ask or changes that we may be thinking about, we don't really have a lot of time to implement them, knowing that at the next meeting we'll be expected to vote on this budget. So anything that anybody has asked today, which nobody really has yet, but say someone says, I want to add X, Y, Z. If you come back to us with a cost for that, we don't really have any time to think about how that works unless we maybe plug this in at our work session again and have just a couple of days to go over it. I feel like this is kind of the side effect of shortening that time.
Right.
But like now we're kind of in a pinch and not having a whole lot of time to sort of think on this or add anything.
Okay, yep.
If anybody has any suggestions about how to solve that particular problem, I'm all ears. But I mean, for one, I would love to talk about something that's not in the budget and that we've talked about in past years. It's been a long time since it's come up, but I'd really like to explore the option of after-school busing for our students and at least get some cost estimates on that to make accessing clubs and sports more equitable for students and give more access to more students to participate in those things. But I'm not sure how we even go about that since we vote on this next month.
I guess I have a procedural question for Ms. Rochelle. If we get questions tonight that we can come up with pricing, is that something we can disseminate just to the board? You asked about the cost of adding of this or taking away of that. Is that information that we can provide in advance of the meeting?
Yes, you may.
Okay.
Of course, anything you provide would be subject to somebody asking for a copy of it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you can absolutely provide it to the board.
And it's something we could also perhaps post if we wanted to on the budget website or something as
Correct.
here's some additional information of things being considered. Okay.
Which would be very useful. Right.
Okay. So
I
that
would
might be an
request-
option.
Yeah, I'd love to know more about how we would build out a plan. Maybe it's a multi-year plan for getting up to full speed, but talking about how we start to implement some kind of programming.
So there's two sides to that. First, the need for transportation is dependent on the offerings, right? And right now, the after-school offerings are most robust at Easton Elementary School. And there is money built in for after-school transportation for them through the community school programming. So it's kind of a matter of each principal put in their budget stipends for offerings that they wanted to have next year. So I guess it's really more of a question of what do we have the capacity to offer based on our staff?
I would love to know the answer. My feeling is that if you build it, they will come, but I could be wrong. So I'd be curious. There's probably some more work to be done here, but I'd be curious to what this looks like and how much it costs and how we would go about building this program. And I don't want to take up all your time with that. I had a couple other questions. Talking about summer school, I know in the past we have had the question as to whether it will be offered at all of our sites. Is the funding built in intended to offer summer school at every elementary school?
No, it's going to depend on what the principals. So the principals go through. This is my understanding of the process, and Dr. Einhorn can jump in. But my understanding is the principals go through and identify the students that would benefit the most, and they've got the data. We have a couple of years of offering a fairly robust summer school to figure out who are the kids that benefit the most from summer school, and one of the populations that benefits a lot is our multilingual learners, because they're the ones most at risk of losing content or knowledge over the summer, I guess. for example, last summer, I think it was determined there were very few Tillman elementary students who would benefit. So it was determined if there were some students there that would benefit, they would attend at St. Michael's. We had some construction, we had some projects going on at different schools, and that's one of the things that typically determines where we can even offer summer school. We usually offer to Easton Middle School because we partner with the Y, and the Y sends their kids over. You know, it's kind of also what some of the other community groups are doing to determine. But we've consolidated both from a staffing standpoint, it makes the most sense, and some of the schools just don't have the numbers to support it on their own.
But just to clarify, a student who needs summer school services, who doesn't have it offered at their home school, can be bused to another school program?
If they've been identified as someone who would benefit, absolutely.
You can't just sign up and say, me, I want to do it, but if you're identified.
No,
Right.
the school principals identify the students.
Okay. My last question is about conscious discipline, which I know we've talked about a lot, and I know that we have been piloting it at a few schools and have had really, really great success stories and some really positive feedback from our staff. I was wondering if you could collect some of those stories to share, some sort of just like positive stories about it. There's a large price tag that goes along with it, and so I think that it's important that we're telling the story of why it works and what it's doing in our community, while along with that ask. And I happen to know it's doing great things, and the board has spoken to that in the past, but I don't know that everybody out there knows, especially if it's not in place at their school yet.
Absolutely, I think we could do that. We get Mrs. Fox to, or Dr. Einhorn, Dr. DeVerick to do that. What I will say about conscious discipline is that is part of our community school funding. So in a sense, it's not part of it's a big increase, but that's part of the mandated funding that we get, and it's a mandated increase. It's not like an additional increase to the county council, for example. So just to clarify that.
I want to jump in just to the topic of summer school. So this year, and there'll be more information about it, but the Summer Career Enrichment Program will be at Easton High School this summer. I want to read, and I'll have like I said, a presentation, but it's a 4-week program for middle school students in partnership with Midshore Regional Council, People for Change Coalition, Dorchester County, Caroline County, and Talbot County. The type of programs offered in this summer career enrichment is drone technology, robotics, chess, healthcare, video design, cybersecurity, media arts, and video editing. So it's two-week sessions that's free of charge for our middle school students. So it will be housed here at Easton High School. So we'll have more information about that, but that will be another summer opportunity for our middle school students.
Is there transportation available?
Transportation is, and there'll be hub
Fantastic. That
stops, yes.
sounds awesome.
So it was at Caroline last year, and like I said, we've rotated it, so it'll be at Easton High School. So more information coming on that.
You have to be identified, or can anyone sign
No.
up? Okay.
Does anybody else have budget questions tonight for Mrs. Jones? I know it's been a lot of information. Budget's always fun. Thank you very much, Mrs. Jones.
Of course.
Next up, we have unfinished business. Refreshing. What's next? Calendar. With Dr. Einhorn.
There's one other piece of unfinished business.
It's not on the agenda.
Oh.
It is?
I'll be brief.
Oh, yes, it is. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Thank you.
I'll
Go
be
ahead.
very brief. I just wanted to let you know, we've been working with Marathon. We are currently in the permitting process. So we submitted applications for permits. We have a beautiful design and layout for this center for our staff's health needs. And Willow Construction, a local construction company, met with subcontractors this week, so they're in the process of getting bids and getting that all squared away. Marathon is in the process of they have a job posting listed. It's a little bit up in the air right now whether it's going to be a PA, a physician's assistant, or a nurse practitioner, but we'll have one of those being our primary provider along with a medical assistant for the lab area and to assist, and some office staff. There'll be a full pharmacy on site, lab services, so we're very excited about this, and evidently we are on target for our May 1 opening. We're going to offer some varied hours. We have some days with a little bit later hours in the evenings, opening a little later, some days opening very early, closing a little earlier. So trying to meet the needs of everyone.
Did we poll our staff onto the hours, as to the hours they would like to see the center open for?
No, I don't think our staff is aware enough about this at this point, but what I will say is this was a concern of mine really early on, and we did talk with them, wanting to make sure they have opened enough of these for school systems to understand that, we want some variety. And I mean, we can fine tune that later. We just have a very rough idea right now. It'll depend on the provider that ultimately they hire. That's something they'll have to negotiate as part of the operating parameters of the center with the provider. And we could do that. I mean, we could certainly pull them at a point. We're just not at that point yet. Yep. So that's it. So we're very excited. Any questions on that? Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Jones. All right, Dr. Einhorn, now it's calendar. Thank you.
I'm going the wrong way. So good evening, Ms. Jackson, members of the board. I am very pleased to be in front of you again today to talk about school calendar. And before we jump into the 25-26 school calendar, as everyone is well aware, recent weather has impacted our 24-25 school calendar. So I'm going to begin by addressing that first, and then we can jump into next school year. So as you know, we had 4 inclement weather days built into our 24-25 school year. We were closed for 5 school days. So we have exhausted the 4 that are in our calendar, and each time we have a school closing, my office is required to submit documentation to the Maryland State Department of Education of how we're going to make up those days so that we stay in compliance with the 180 days required in COMAR for student attendance. So as always, when we come to you with a problem or something that needs to be fixed, we do also like to offer you our best suggestion of how that issue might be addressed. So at this point, we need to make up 1 school day in our calendar. So on the screen here, you will see our current school calendar. With the 4 inclement weather days built in, you will see where our last school days were at the end. So what we are recommending is that the additional day that we need to add to our calendar, that we put that last student day on Friday, June 13th, which would move our last teacher day to Monday, June 16th. We know that in-person instruction is the best for meeting our student needs. So that really was one of our primary drivers for making this as our recommendation for how we would like to make up that day. While thinking about bringing staff in for 1 day the following week may not be the most agreeable, I do want to remind the board that per our negotiated agreement, our staff is able to complete all of their Safe Schools training, which is many, many hours of mandated training outside of their regular workday. And if they do complete that by a specified day, they are not required on their last teacher workday to come into the buildings. So historically, I don't have the exact number, but I would say it's about 99% of our staff who avail themselves of that. I'm going to look to my friends in the audience here for their thumbs up on that. So I'm not anticipating with this plan that we would be having many of our teachers in on Monday, June 16th, but this would allow us to make up that student day, make up our teacher day, but have a option for those teachers who wanted to finish on Friday the 13th when students left. So that would be our recommendation for making up the one day for students. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have regarding that or entertain any other options you would like me to try to discuss.
Dr. Einhorn, I just wanted to ask that first Monday of the snow, the governor had declared a state of emergency statewide. Are we able to apply for a waiver day for that Monday where there was a statewide emergency declared?
So I think I'm going to defer to Dr. Pepkai on that because I know the superintendents have had discussion about that.
Yeah, we met, we checked, and we had to exhaust all of what we're talking about before that waiver is done, because we all were in the same boat.
Sorry. I just had a question regarding like, does this have any effect on like graduation or things like that when we add a day, or is it always the same day?
It's always the same
Oh,
day
okay.
once it's set on the calendar. You're welcome.
And we're gonna keep you. Sorry about that. Okay, so, hey, there's snow in the forecast for
That-
this
That's
coming
my
week.
next piece.
Okay, good.
But the first thing I would need to do is to get board approval for this plan in terms of making up the one day that we will still have to figure out what we're going to do.
Have we by chance, asked the union how they feel about this, or do you have a read from teachers as to what their feeling is? Can it get their content in? Are they amenable to this as the plan?
I'll be honest, I did not reach out to the union because this is a board decision to set the calendar and to make these choices. What I will say that some of the other options, I know we've discussed in the past, and those were not always the favorite choices of people, so you can always ask for a waiver of, say, President's Day. You could take a day off of your spring break. I mean, that's certainly within the board's purview to make those decisions. But given all those options, as we kind of tried to weigh them, we felt this one was in the best interest of our students.
This seems like the path of least resistance to me, but again, I'm not a teacher, so I just curious if you had any sort of feeling on that one. But yes, this seems like the path of least resistance
Mr. Burke.
to me.
Reading the room.
So you need a vote from us as to whether or not we approve this?
Yes, please.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve the amended calendar, which changes the last day of school for students to Friday, not February, June 13th, to make up for the one additional snow day that we did not have built into the calendar.
I'll second it.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Now let's talk about
Thank
the
you so much.
coming snow.
So, again, before I get to the 25-26 calendar, there is additional business because winter is far from over. And despite our best efforts to plan ahead for that, there is perhaps impending snow coming. So, per Senate Bill 610, a local school board may authorize the superintendent to implement a virtual learning plan for a day in which the superintendent would deem that due to inclement weather, it would behoove us to move to virtual instruction for our students and staff. School systems can only avail themselves of this option once they have exhausted all of the days that were built in for inclement weather and have made a good faith effort to alter their calendar to accommodate the days that are missed. Again, we learned during our school closures due to the pandemic that virtual instruction, while it provides for students, we know in person with their teachers is the best. So the intent of Senate Bill 610 was to ensure that we always try first to have students in person, but when we exhaust those efforts, the school board has the authority to empower the superintendent to make the decision for inclement weather to move to a virtual day plan. So at this point, I would be requesting of the school board to approve, per Senate Bill 610, our superintendent being able to make that decision to move to virtual instruction.
Okay, so my question about this one is if we do apply for a waiver, and I believe it was 2 days that the state was under a state of emergency, I could be wrong. It was definitely Monday. I thought it was Monday and Tuesday. But if we apply for a waiver for however many days, do we then put those days back in our snow day bank, essentially? Because we have made up our 1 day, so would we then get 2 days back and therefore, or 1 day back and therefore not need to use this? How does that work?
So I don't know that my brain was able to comprehend all of those things that quickly. I think I understand your intent. If there was a process for a waiver, which I understand from Dr. Pepikai, there currently is not, and we applied for that waiver and we were approved for it, we would still have days left. Usually when you apply for a waiver, though, you have to have exhausted all your days first in order to make that compelling reason.
I think what I'm saying is we've used 4 snow days. We actually used 5. We have just amended our calendar to make up for 1. So where we sit today, we're even. We're good.
Correct.
Let's just no more snow. Great. We're good. Let's say we got a snow day on Friday. If we then went back and requested a waiver for 2 of the previous days, would that cancel out the snow day that we would then be using?
But you can't make that request for that waiver.
Not that day, the waiver for the previous days.
We can't.
Okay. I'm not sure I understand, but I'm not sure I'm being super clear about it. Okay. Then I make a motion that we approve the virtual day instruction plan, which allows the superintendent to authorize a use of a virtual education day in the case of severe weather conditions as per COMAR. Is it COMAR?
Senate Bill
Senate bill,
610.
okay.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay.
So with that decision, we will be posting the plan again on our website so that it's readily available to our public, and making sure that we remind our schools about what that plan is and keep tracking the weather and hope we get lucky and don't have to use it.
I just have a question, but not towards the motion at all. I'm kind of briefing the Senate Bill 610, and this does not include kindergarten and pre-kindergarten. So,
Right, so we know from our past experience that having our youngest students on their devices trying to instruct. So in talking with some of my colleagues across the state who were in school on January 3rd and could send devices and packets home and be prepared for it, for their littles, they sent home packets. And we are able to use those in case students don't have access to internet, aren't able to use it at a given time. So there are some provisions in there for that.
great, thank you. I just wanted to be sure that the board wasn't approving that those grades be under the virtual if that's not required under the bill. So thank you.
Will we be using any of our upcoming teacher work days or professional development to help new teachers with virtual instruction?
Yes, and actually part of the Senate bill includes a provision that teacher preparation programs should also be helping to prepare new teachers. But we are very fortunate. We have our devices available to students. We have our LMS, and they're relatively easy to work with, much more so than the LMS that we had previously during the pandemic.
Just for clarification, LMS is Learning Management System.
Thank you very much, Ms.
Which
Jackson.
is what program for any parents watching?
Schoology.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so the part you've all been, oh, I'm sorry, I did get approval, correct? So the part you've all been waiting for is a follow-up to our December conversation about school calendar. I presented to you last month on first reader the calendar you see before you here, and I've labeled it as A because in addition to this calendar that the committee recommended, I have two others for your consideration this evening based on your feedback. Again, this calendar is the result of the Talbot County Public School Calendar Committee work, and it represented their recommendations to you for next school year. All three of the calendars that I'm going to show you tonight are in compliance with COMAR and our negotiated agreement, which I shared with you those requirements at our last meeting. So this calendar, Calendar A, is the committee recommended calendar that you saw last month. And just as a reminder, the first day of school for students is August 25th, and the last day for students is June 5th and June 11th because we continue to build in the 4 inclement weather days. The winter break would be December 20th, with students returning on January 4th. Schools would be closed for students November 13th and 14th for waterfowl, which continues to be a priority for our community as we've seen in past surveys. Also in November, we would be closing for the Thanksgiving break. There would be 2 days in this calendar for students around President's Day, which is February 16th, and the 17th would be a no-school day for students, and teachers would have professional learning or conferences. In this calendar, the committee felt it was important to provide some days off from that long stretch of President's Day to spring break. So they built in March 12th and 13th as schools closed for both students and staff. And the spring break, which is always around the Easter holiday because of the COMAR requirement that we be closed on Good Friday and Easter Monday, would be April 2nd to the 6th. For students, teachers would work on the 2nd, again, for professional learning and or grading. The committee tried to be cognizant of the feedback from parents that half-days were disruptive in the calendar, so there was a lot of conversation about how to get in the professional learning and conferences without that burden on our families. There are 3 half-days for teacher grading per the negotiated agreement, and 2 additional half-days for conferences or professional learning for a total of 5 half-days in the calendar that the committee sent to you. All of these are on Friday. Wanted to clarify, except for November 12th, which is a Wednesday, and that is the day leading up to waterfowl. And that is why it's on Wednesday as opposed to Friday, as the board has preference for. The only change in this calendar from the first reader I presented to you last month and the one you see here on the screen is November 12th, which is a half-day professional learning for elementary. We had half-day conferences on the 12th for elementary and half-day conferences on the 13th for elementary. We know our elementary schools always say they need more time with parents. In some conversation, it was suggested that a full day of conferences would be better than trying to split it up over 2 half-days, particularly in cases where we need to have some interpreters in our conferences. So that is the only change, and I wanted to clarify that for the board as you see it. So that is Calendar A that you saw last time. Calendar B was an option that the committee actually developed and considered. It came down to Calendar A and Calendar B for the committee's vote, and they selected A, but Calendar B was something they did discuss. This calendar is the same as Calendar A recommended by the committee, except that for spring break and the last day of school. This calendar does not have the 2 days off in March, and instead those days were moved to the spring break, and they did also add another day, so that spring break for students would be April 1st through the 8th, I believe, and April 2nd through the 8th for our staff. With that move, the last day for students would be June 8th, and June 12th would be the last day with the inclement weather days built into it. And then there is calendar C. It's the same in many ways as calendar A, except it includes the longer spring break that was also in calendar B, but it does also preserve the 2 days off in March. So the impact of continuing the 2 March days and the longer spring break for students and staff is that the last student day would be June 10th. If there were no inclement weather days, and June 16th if we used the 4 inclement weather days. So that was a lot of information on calendars. So what I did try to put together for you, and I'm not sure if this helps at all or even confuses it more, was to try to capture just some of the pieces that you have asked about as we build out our calendar, number of half-days, professional learning, the length of our holidays, all of those pieces. So really the big impact comes down to kind of those bottom lines, just for when the end of the school year would be. And the only other thing that I would like to share with the board in response, I believe, Ms. Jackson, you asked about more professional learning time and how important that is for our teachers, and I agree with you 100%. But I do know the committee was very concerned about the burden on families with the half-days. But we have staff right now who are engaging in required professional learning with the Maryland State Department of Education, which is required in the blueprint, and that we are going to have to roll out to all of our staff next year. Unfortunately, we don't exactly know what that will look like, what the requirements will be. We haven't gotten that information yet. But what we do know is that research shows that the most effective professional learning for teachers is when it's job embedded. So what we are looking at is models for how we would provide more professional learning to teachers during their regular work days through some possible creative scheduling options. And that also aligns with the blueprint expectation that we start embedding our professional learning during teachers' work days. So I just wanted to share that if the board were so agreeable, those who are organizing professional learning would like to request 1 additional half-day in whatever calendar is selected. And that would be, their request ideally would be for Friday, September 12th. And the rationale for that is that they would be able to set the foundation for the job-embedded professional learning that we would continue throughout the rest of the year, but all staff would be able to get it at once, and then each individual school would be implementing the programming based on their schedule and how they organize their staff in professional learning communities. So that would be the additional request that's not captured on any of those calendars. And at this point, happy to answer questions, but await your decision of what calendar you would like to have for the 25-26 school year.
Dr. Einhorn, I would like to start by apologizing for last month. I was caught off guard and I was very flustered. I don't always present as my best self under those circumstances, so I think I came across as very flustered. So yes, my apologies to you specifically about that. I know how much work you put into this and the committee as well. I figured out what happened. For some reason, I don't get emails from the committee chair.
Oh.
I don't know why. They all went to my junk. I found them all a little bit late. I sit here representing the whole constituency of Talbot County. And so I have to make sure that I am listening when we ask them what they think and feel. And having had the pleasure of serving for a fairly long time now, I've had the opportunity to hear feedback from our community a number of times. And so I think that I'm pretty well versed when it comes to what our community is looking for when it comes to a calendar. And I do protect that kind of fiercely, which I think showed up last month. Again, apologies. But I will say that there tends to be 4 things that stand out that our community consistently asks for. And that is what I will go to bat for all the time. 2 of them conflict, which makes it very difficult. But the first thing that our community has always asked for is that long winter break. And that is represented in every calendar we're looking at because the calendar is very amenable to that. So I think we just get lucky for a few years. We don't have to discuss it, but it's showing up nicely. So that is thing 1. Thing 2 that our community has always asked for is a legitimate spring break, not just a long weekend, an actual week off. And I think that the people were very willing to be flexible this year and understanding when we split the spring break over 2 different weeks. And I think that that was a really good compromise for a lot of people, for the people who wanted their full week spring break and for people who said, hey, that's really difficult. And I think that this board understood that that was very difficult for people, and that was the compromise we tried to make. So that's thing 2. Thing 3 that we have consistently heard is from our staff, who is consistently saying that they need more time to plan for their students, to bring their best for our students, for professional learning, for grading, for conferences. We hear it. That is the number 1 request I get from any staff member at any time is time. And so I want the community to know that that is heard and understood. It conflicts with thing 4, which is consistently hearing from our community that half days are very difficult, particularly for elementary students, particularly for parents who are trying to manage their elementary students. And I think that as a community, we have an opportunity here, maybe not as a school system, but as a community to meet that need. And I would be putting a blanket request out to our community. What can we do to serve the needs of those parents and those students that's not signing up for daycare that you don't need? So I would put the call out to our community to please meet this need in a creative way. But knowing that our parents and our community is asking for that, again, conflicts with teachers and staff asking for more time. So I'm hoping that we can find a happy medium. It looks to me like every calendar presented today has the same number of half days. So that's not really up for discussion, although we can request to change it. They're all presented in the same way. The final thing that I want to say is that I talked to a lot of people about calendar. And I say this to everybody. Each individual person will tell me why any calendar is best for them and their family, and I totally understand. There are calendars that we have looked at that are best for me and my family that I would go to bat for, but I can't stand up here and say, well, this is what we're going to do as a county because it's what I want and it's what's best for me. And I understand that there is no calendar that we're going to create that is best for every single person. And so when I am discussing calendar, I have to come back to those 4 main things, and that is what I come back to. That doesn't necessarily mean it's what I want or what's best necessarily for my family and my kids, but that's what the community has said is best for them. And I'd love to hear what other people think.
I would, Ms. Jackson, then just assume from some of the things that you just shared, that calendar C with the longer B or C would at least, they address the longer winter break, that would be the longer spring break. Again, the professional learning, I would like to remind the board, I would like 1 more day if we could in September. And again, that's part of that half-day conflict. The other thing I didn't mention, and my apologies, because this was a discussion point at our last presentation, is the staggered start for pre-K. We know that used to be in our calendar when we applied for the pre-K expansion grant. We had to go the 180 days. We've looked at several models from across the state, so each one of the calendars has the staggered start for pre-K. I did reach out to colleagues to figure out how they brought in like 6th grade or 9th grade early. And one of the things they do is they take from those first teacher work days. So where we have 2 days of conferencing, a no-touch day for staff to get ready, a school-based day, curriculum day, I think I got all those. That's where they would take time in order to bring those groups in.
I did show up with my own version of the calendar, which I'm not gonna inflict it on you today, but it did have that staggered start, as that's something that Dr. Papukari has said that she was interested in exploring in the past, and I we have talked a lot about those transition grades being really important in making sure that they are supported in those transitions. If we could put together a calendar that had a staggered start, I would be very in favor of it. But even just starting back with our staggered start for pre-K, maybe we do that this year and we look to do a staggered start for 26, 27 for our other grades. I would be amenable to that. But yes, that is the one thing I forgot to mention. I have heard that consistently from our pre-K teachers that they would really like to do that again. And I do hear the need for making sure that our transition year students are supported. And I think that that would be, anecdotally, in talking to the students in my life, they said that would be a really good idea. So something I would like to consider. I did have a question. I know other counties don't have 4 inclement snow days built in. Watching kind of what happened with this last storm, there was quite a few that only have 2. Historically, 2 is about the number of days that we use. We've had, a couple of dry years that we happen to have a massive storm, which sort of changes everybody's perspective right now. But I think, if you're going by the data and the numbers, 2 is more appropriate for what we use. Could we put on the calendar, for example, if we did calendar C, those 2 days in March, could those be inclement weather days marked down as such rather than putting them onto the end of the school year? So that should we have another large storm, we had 2 built in to the end of the year and 2 built in March?
I am not certain about that. I would need to get some clarity. I mean, the board always has it's within the board's purview when we need to make up days to remove days that would have been days off that are not in COMAR. Those would have to go through a waiver.
I think that there are other counties who have put them in there in that way. I think I always see the calendars at the doctor's office when I take the kids to the pediatrician, and so I look at what everybody else is doing. And I want to say Queen Anne's County marks those down that way. Don't quote me on the specific county.
So I think in the past, if I remember all of my calendar iterations, one of the things we did in one year after a very bad snow situation was to identify in the calendar that those were possible days should we need to use them, so that families knew that those could, and staff, that those could possibly revert to school days if we were in that situation.
If it were me and I was tweaking this, I would do that. I would add 1 more day onto the end of this school year so that the last day of school is the 12th. Maybe.
Well, I think it does, the issue is you're going to be counting in your 180 days already. So you wouldn't count those in as your 2 days in the calendar. I'm not sure I'm saying that correctly.
I get what you're saying.
Thank you.
I hadn't gotten to, and also add a staggered start. So adding in a day in the beginning, essentially. I would tweak the calendar so that it reflected all of those things, but otherwise this is the direction I would go.
So one of the things that I caution about with the staggered start and adding days around, we do also have to be cognizant of the teacher contract time and how many days teachers work. So it's not just a matter of moving the student days, it's also staff days. So we would have to take staff work days that are already dedicated for something else for those staggered starts.
But the staff would still be in the building, whether their grades were there or not. So wouldn't that count as a work day for them?
It would. But it would take away from those teachers who are doing the staggered start from some of the other activities they do prior to students coming in. So you would have some teachers who might be able to be working in their classrooms setting up, and you would have other teachers who are face-to-face with students.
Right. So I'm saying like the 18th would be day 1 for half of the district, and the 19th would be day 1 for the other half, and the 20th would be day 2 for everybody. Right?
I'm certainly happy to take it back to the calendar committee. I'm not sure that I can process that quickly tonight.
If this is not for this year, again, I would be amenable to going back to our staggered start for pre-K this year and really fleshing out this idea for 26, 27. I'm very in favor of making sure that we get there, but it doesn't have to be right now.
And I just want to clarify on this calendar for looking at this, any day that's in green is a teacher work day. It's not a student day. So you would really be talking about, yeah.
So I'm going to be the odd man out. I'm for calendar A. I did have someone approach me prior to the meeting that they don't want to see the long summer break. I understand, the kids want to look at colleges, but our college experience, if I remember correctly, those are some excused absences to a point. But
Did you mean spring break? Did you mean spring break?
I'm sorry, spring
Spring
break.
break.
Yeah. But you can look at colleges. You have to look at them according to their schedule a lot of times anyway. So it's not going to matter what week our spring break falls on. And so that's the thing. And you're losing a lot of school time for 8 days off for students. You're losing a lot of momentum, and plus, you're concerned with providing daycare. Not all employers are going to allow that. That's quite a long time to take off of work and find daycare and so forth. So, and with the fact that the HVAC system is not up to par, going into the middle of summer may not be ideal. Just as an aside. I mean, you're infringing on starting jobs, and seniors who want to get off to school, and a lot of colleges, they want you to come to school in August, so you're not going to have a great big summer to enjoy either. So, not that that's the priority, but
Other thoughts?
So
I
this
remember
cal-
hearing, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, after our meeting last month, you did take this back to the calendar committee, and calendar A is what the calendar committee is again recommending.
So calendar A was what they recommended. Calendar B is what they considered in their group. The overall consensus from the calendar committee was based on needs of students, things of that nature, that the longer spring break was not what they were going to recommend.
And there was just one change to calendar A from the last time we seen it, correct?
Correct. That was to, no, I will take that back. I don't know that the staggered start was actually listed on calendar A the first time, but that, remember, I needed to get back to you on that information. The committee did talk about it and agreed that was helpful for pre-K. And then the change was the November 12th, November 13th. So we're not splitting up the elementary conferences half-day and half-day. It's just a full day.
One of the things I remember you talking about when you presented the calendar at the last meeting was that you had done a survey, a community survey, previously, not this immediate year, but the previous year, and that the longer spring break was something that had been identified by a majority of people who took the survey as something that was important to them. So that kind of stuck in my mind when you gave that presentation, that we had given that reach out to the community and gotten that feedback. The other thing I remembered hearing about particularly was the half-days, and also looking to consolidate half-days on Fridays where there were half-days. And it looks like your calendar is reflecting that, as including the additional half-day that you're requesting for September 12th, that also is a Friday. So thank you for that, that awareness.
In order to meet the requested longer spring break, I would propose we select B or C.
We might also consider, if there is a concern about going too far into the summer, as Carla mentioned, doing one day
for a March break. So having a 3-day weekend offered rather than a 4-day period.
I think if we could find out if we could use those as snow contingent days, that would kind of split the difference about going further into June. And if you have days off, in the winter, it ends up being days off. And you accomplish sort of what you're hoping to by giving people days off in March. Could we pause on voting on this until we find out if that's an option? I know we don't have to vote on this today. We can hold it over for next month, but I'm kind of curious what the board's appetite for that would be to hold off to get some answers before we vote on this.
So again, I do believe it's within the board's purview to designate days within the calendar that could be potential makeup days. I think the caution I have about just taking them off the end is we don't know if we're going to use them or not. So we do need to have a date set for the end of our calendar. So not knowing, it's easier to set, here's the last day of school, if we use our 4 days.
So what if we went with option C, but only those 2 days in March are designated as potential snow makeup days instead of guaranteed off? Can we do that?
Or
I don't disagree with that. I just take attendance into consideration and think that if there is a long break planned, people will plan to be out of town, and therefore altering plans is probably, it's in my thinking, it's less likely that people make alterable plans to double negatives. People will be more likely to change plans for a weekend than for a full week off. One more question about calendar C. I know that we have heard in the past that teachers really like those half days on the last days of school because they have to get their grades in and it's really a condensed time frame. Does that include half days on the last day of school? I'm trying to
So one of
get
the
up to
things
speed.
we were able to do is we moved one of the teacher work days from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, which limits the need for 2 half days in a row. So teachers have 2 full work days after students leave, plus the half day when students are there, which allows them to finish grading, verifying their grades moving forward. So the movement of that day helps take care of that issue.
I know in the past we have heard from the teachers that they prefer to do their work days in the beginning of the year versus the end, but I would be willing to give this a shot, this one extra day, to see how it works out. I think we have tried a few different things over the past few years to say, hey, do you like this? Does this work? We're not putting a whole week at the end, just one day, and maybe that would work out better. I am inclined to lean towards calendar C for all of the reasons above, with those potential snow contingency days on March 12th and 13th.
my only concern is that if 59% of our students are at the poverty level, we're really talking about more of a smaller group who are really going to financially be able to afford a longer Easter holiday. I know Christmas is what it is, but that's more. A spring break is, to me, not quite the same. So you're really could possibly potentially be causing more hardship for something that's more an elitist type thing, quite honestly.
I don't disagree with you, and I hear the point that you're making, and that was brought up again and again by the calendar committee, and it can't be ignored. But I also know that we have asked again and again, and that the majority of the respondents to any time we've asked this have said they like that spring break. And so I don't know, I can't say, hey, tell me what you think. Actually, you're wrong. It doesn't. I just have to go with what the community is saying, and the community has said that. And then most recently, the teachers were polled about their thoughts about the most recent calendar, and the majority of them said they liked the longer spring break too. I have to keep coming back to that. That's the only data point that I have. But I don't disagree with you, and that's where I go back to on an individual level. You can talk about any calendar, why it works for one family or another, and there's arguments all day long about.
That's why we switched spring break to be over 2 different weeks so that kids have the opportunity to come into school the Monday and Tuesday and the Thursday and Friday, and they're not out 5 full days the same week, because then there's potential for them to get care packs and get meals on those days, at least some of the days within a calendar week.
I just have clarification. So with the snow days, the contingency 12th and 13th, meaning if, from what I'm hearing, the 12th and 13th are off, but if there's snow, we're going to take those two back. Is that what I'm hearing? So then what does that mean for June? And does that mean the last day then is the 10th without the 15th, 16th on? Or does it move to the 8th? I just want
the
that
8th,
June
right?
clarification.
The calendar is built on 180 days for students.
Okay.
So the date that's listed as the last student day without inclement weather is
The 10th, it says no, it says, let's see. I'm
last
trying to
day
read
for
it.
students. I can't,
I'm trying to look too. I see 10th,
Yep.
early dismissal, teacher grading.
that would be the last day for
Last day,
students.
earliest possible last day for students, the 10th.
Correct.
Right here.
So that is assuming we would be off on the 12th and 13th. If all the inclement weather days are at the end, that's how it pushes it further back. so
To
that-
the, right,
the 16th.
correct.
So if we were to have inclement weather and need to use those 2 days off.
Correct.
It does not impact your first possible last day for students, because you still have to have 180 days of
days. Got it.
instruction.
Okay.
So June 10th is,
Got it.
It really it gives you 6 built-in weather days instead of 4.
Correct.
and I
So-
think that's what we had done previously, because we had that period of lots of school closures. We took President's Day, I believe, one year. It was a lot to try to fix.
I think the point that I'm trying to make with this is that if you include the 12th and the 13th as contingent days, then you could change that last possible day, not from the 10th, from the 16th to the 12th, which cuts off that second returning week.
It does. And I just, again, I want to clarify, that assumes that our inclement weather is snow. We have had, in my experience in Talbot County Public Schools, closures for other types of weather events or something else that required that we close later than those dates.
Sure. I mean, we could talk about all sorts of natural disasters that could possibly occur. We live on the coast, things could happen. I don't know when we've ever had more than 4 days built in. I know that we used to have, there have been times when we've had fewer, so I don't think we need to build 6 days in. I think even 4 is being generous. But yes, all sorts of horrible things could happen. Okay, I would like to make a motion that we approve draft calendar C with the change that the 12th and 13th of March are added as snow contingency days and or weather contingency days, or just contingent, however you write that. And that the last possible day for students is then marked down as the 12th.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Is there any discussion? Any further discussion at the?
Would we like more discussion?
I just wanted to ask about the consideration of that September 12th day as a work day that Dr. Einhorn suggested.
Yes, I would make that amendment to this calendar as well. Sorry, I thought that was understood.
So adding September 12th as a half-day for students, professional learning for staff. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Okay. let's do a roll call vote. Okay. I make a motion that we approve the 2025-26 draft calendar C with the following amendments. September 12th is a half-day for students, half-day workday for staff. And March 12th and 13th are marked down as potential inclement weather days. And the last day for students, the last possible stay for students, is marked down at Friday, June 12th. Clear? Okay. And now I need a second.
Second that.
Would you like to do a roll call vote? Faith? Okay. A roll call vote means Faith is going to call you individually, and you're just going to say yes or no in your vote. So go ahead.
Aye.
Aye.
I still dissent. I'm with calendar A. I'm sorry, I'm going with what the committee recommended. Nay.
Okay. She seconded, yeah.
Aye.
I vote aye. Okay. And that is the wrap on calendar for this year. Thank you, Dr. Einhorn.
Thank
Hopefully
you.
we don't have to see you back with any further amendments to this year's calendar, knock on wood. Okay.
Thank you.
Moving right along to personnel report with Dr. Horsey or Dr. Pepkai. Okay, Dr. Horsey, thank you.
Good evening once again. I would just like to ask the board to approve the personnel report that we discussed in closed session.
I make a motion that we approve the personnel report as discussed in closed session.
I'll second it.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay. My screen is not coming up. Sorry, my screen is just whited out.
Ms. Jones with the monthly budget report.
All right, yes, Ms. Jones with the monthly budget report.
Can you advance the slide? Thank you. This is the financial report, budget versus actual for the 6 months ended December 31. We're halfway through the fiscal year, although we're not halfway through the school year quite yet. For the new board members, I wanted to point out the column in the middle toward the bottom that says year-to-date obligations, and I'm going to talk about what that means. When we put someone on staff, we encumber a full year's salary for them. So we have a lot in the year-to-date obligations that we haven't spent yet, but we know we're going to spend. So I just wanted to make that clear. Thanks, Dr. Pepakai. So going up to revenues, we are on track. We collect our local revenues from the county on a monthly basis. We get our state revenues generally every other month. So some months we're a little ahead, some months we're a little behind on the state revenues, but it all works out in the end. In terms of our local revenues, besides our local appropriation from the county, we also have a little bit of miscellaneous revenues, such as we have budgeted interest income of $974,000, and we're running a little ahead on that so far this year, so that's good news. So revenues are on track, as are expenditures. We have no categories where we anticipate going over budget. We have a few individual line items within each of those categories that are projecting to possibly be over budget. We're not there yet. That's coming from some purchase orders we may have in the works. At some point, we likely could come to you with a request for a slight budget tweak. And some of that is due to the work we talked about doing on our athletic fields and spending some additional money in our maintenance budget, and a few other small line items. But overall, all of our categories are within budget, and we anticipate that being the case for the year.
Any questions for Mrs. Jones tonight? Okay, thank you very much. Next up, we have our superintendent's report with Dr. Pepikay.
So what you see here, it's back in November, but it's buzzing right now in Annapolis. Legislation season is upon us. And this is just a letter to the governor from the 24 superintendents talking about blueprint items that we want to prioritize as to the things we think we can do, things are possible, and things that we've really tried but are challenging. So this is a letter basically talking about that, and we made a presentation to MSDE as well as AIB with those same requests. So it did start the conversation rolling. The AIB had a meeting last week, and they have paused the collaborative planning time. So I presume we'll continue to talk about things in the blueprint and use our advocacy voice as superintendents to try to make some changes with that. Public budget hearing will take place February 10th right here in this room. So we'll be, that will be out posted for that information to come out. Of course, we know with the snowstorm, while we were warm in our homes, we do have our staff, our plant operations crew that is out here getting our buildings ready for us to return. So a huge thank you to the whole team for getting our schools ready, the salt down, and all of our buildings operable for us to be back. Upcoming events. Tomorrow, we are excited to host our own career fair from 4 to 7. So please tell a friend and have them say yes to TCPS. So this is a slide. I have student advisory groups, and today I met with the Easton High group. And Monday is, we're off national holiday for Martin Luther King Jr. And so I asked the group that I spoke with, what is their dream? And so I kind of highlighted some of the things that they said. There were a range of 9th through 12th graders that I met with. And so I gave them, just write it. They didn't put their names, and I just captured what they said. And so just wanted to share that we're dialoguing. I'm dialoguing with students, and we're really having some really good conversations about what they wish for in the nation, as well as their hopes and dreams for themselves. So I'm really enjoying meeting with this group, grades 6 through 12 across the district, and I meet with them every month. So exciting things that are happening. And that concludes my remarks.
Dr. P, I was under the impression we were going to have some updated information on the cell phone pouch rollout. Is
Yep.
that pushed back due
It's
to the
February.
snow?
It's going to be February, yep.
Okay, everybody's favorite time of the night is board member remarks. I'm going to start down on student side tonight. Gabrielle, you want to go first?
First off, all the new information is a lot, but thank you to everyone that has taken their time to really see the student version and the administrative side. I do just want to say, someone that works closely with the special education populations through our unified sports in the community and Easton High, I really appreciate that we are funding them more and supporting them more, because I see a dire need for more support in the schools for students across, whether it's their resources, their education, enrichment, everything. So I just want to say thank you for taking the time and the resources to put that into them, because I truly believe that it will be well used.
Thank you. Bryn?
It was definitely super interesting to see like the whole budget and the layout of all of that. I will say it was really fascinating to see just how diverse, and also I feel like as like a county, how much we really like pay attention to, just because we are filled with so many different students. And I really loved to see that there was like increased in like the arts with someone who like works. I am involved a lot in that within my school, and just like seeing how much that it can impact, because I know there's a lot on like just regular classes and APs, but like the arts can have so much effect, and I've seen it in so many of my classmates. And so to see that that's kind of getting some recognition and some money dumped into that is just really nice to see.
Thank you. Ms. Bridges?
I want to say thank you to Mrs. Jones and all your staff for putting this budget together. Whew, it's a lot. And Mr. Schaefer, I want to say thank you to you too. I went to a horticulture show over this weekend, And oh my God, the stuff you can find. Thank you for keeping it within our budget. And Dr. P and all your staff, I know this has been a huge year for lifting, for all of this new curriculums, and we've asked a lot, and I'm just hoping that we see lots of progress. So thank you very much.
Ms. Jurius?
Thank you. I echo that. I wanted to say thank you to Ms. Jones for all of the information you provided on the budget last week and tonight as well. And particularly Dr. Pepikai, and I know you've been involved with this as well, is looking at aligning the budget with the goals and what it is we're trying to accomplish for the progress for our students. Appreciate also the good work and good thought on the calendar. And also thank you to our student representatives for sharing what you did tonight. I also was impressed by the Unified Sports Program that you're working on, the things you're doing in community service and sports and career readiness, just working on so many different areas. And it's wonderful for us to hear that, what's happening on the ground. Thank you.
Ms. Dodson?
I also wanted to thank Gabriella for bringing up Unified Sports. For those of you that aren't aware, Unified Sports at Easton Elementary is organized team activities for students with special needs. They do a fall sport and they do a winter sport, and the high school staff comes out and volunteers. The high school students come out and volunteer, and it's really great opportunity for these children. I also want to thank everybody involved in putting together the staff requests correlating to the budget, because those of you who have dug into that know that the staff requests directly correspond with improving our student outcomes, improving our student scores, and meeting the needs of the students who really need it. And that's a big part of our budget increase, and it really will help us reach our goals if we're able to do that.
Ms. Whelan-Cherry?
I thought it was going to be last. So my phrases, my best professional terms is ditto. Thank you for everything.
Ms. Strawberry?
Thank you for the appreciation gifts and your thoughtfulness for board appreciation. Also on yesterday, the four of us as newer board members had the opportunity to drive up to Annapolis and attend the MABE orientation program, where we were able to learn and basically get an overview on how to effectively be a board member and how to be actionable and to serve our community and our schools effectively. So we had a really good time and learned a lot of essential skills there. And lastly, thank you to everyone involved to support programs and resources aimed at improving our student outcomes.
Ms. O'Connor?
Yes, I wanted to say the same thing about the MABE conference. We were able to attend yesterday for the new board members. It was a really great overview of what is expected of us, what is our job, what we are allowed to do, what we aren't allowed to do. So thank you for allowing for us to attend that, and for all this budget. Thank you for diving in, and we have so much work to do, but thank you for all of your work, all of you. And of course the students, that's the highlight of the board meetings, to see what actually is going on and how they are taking what is on at the school and diving in and bringing it to us. So thank you for that.
So we've hit 2025. We hit the ground running. It's really exciting. A lot of really great things happening, again, starting with our students. You may think there's not a lot going on at school, but it's all really impressive. And you guys are just leading the pack at your schools. And we're just so thankful that you are there, shining stars in your leadership programs at your schools. Thank you, Mrs. Jones and team, for this budget. It is a really, really good one. I've been around, like I said, for a while, and I've seen a lot of different budget cycles. This feels very thoughtful and very purpose-built and very, like Mrs. Dodson said, driven towards improving student outcome. And I'm not sure I've seen those very clear connections in any other budget cycle that I've been a part of. So I am really fully standing behind this one. It's a good one. And to me, that indicates how much work you had to do to get here. So thank you very much to the entire team for doing that. And thank you everybody for your lift, quite literally shoveling out our community. It was very noticed, and we appreciate it, especially here at TCPS. I saw some of those parking lots before they got plowed, and that was a serious, serious lift. And Dr. P, thanks for leading this team quite fearlessly. As always, we wouldn't be here without you, and I'm just very thankful for your leadership today and all of the days. So I'm very excited about what's ahead for this year. And with that, would anybody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. 8:23, and we're adjourned.